Do you remember that scene from My Girl where Veda gets her period for the first time and her friend Thomas Shay comes to the door and she slams the door. She's like, come back in 5 to 7 days. Like, I feel like our equivalent is like, slam the door, come back in 10 years.
Yeah, don't touch me. Leave me alone.
Okay, friends, today we are talking about perimenopause, the thing that we were technically warned about but didn't really understand until it showed up and moved in. You know, the phase where you suddenly think, oh, this is what they meant. And if you're not there yet, buckle up because it's closer than you think. In the first part of this episode, I'm sitting down with my friend Carrie for a very real, very honest conversation about what it's actually like to be in perimenopause. The brain fog, the emotional whiplash, the sleep issues, and those moments where you realize that you don't quite feel like yourself. And then in the second half, we're shifting from lived experience to expert insight. I'll be joined by Dr. Jackie Piasta, a doctor of nursing practice and board-certified women's health nurse practitioner, and she's here to answer listener questions and help us understand what's really happening in our bodies and what we can do to start feeling more like ourselves again. This episode is about connecting the dots, getting some answers, and realizing we're not crazy, we're just in our 40s. All right, guys, so today we're going to talk about the number one topic that my friends have said we need to talk about on Found at 40. The thing that, as Leanne Morgan says, comes in the middle of the night like a ghost and can last up to 10 years. Drumroll, please. It's perimenopause. The word that didn't seem to exist even 3 years ago that is suddenly dominating your social media feeds. So I've brought along someone who knows a thing or two about perimenopause, and I'm so excited to talk to her all about it. Please welcome my wonderful friend, Carrie Youell. Carrie, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carrie.
To be here.
So excited you're here. Tell listeners a little bit about you.
Oh, goodness. Where to start? So first, married to my college sweetheart, David. We have 3 boys. I'm a girly girl, but I live in the land of boys and I love it. 16, 14, and 8 years old. And so ventured into the 16-year-old and getting his license and driving and all that. It's scary. It's crazy. That's a whole nother topic we can discuss. I'm a small business owner for a franchise. It's called Apex Leadership Company. So we work with schools. My heart and passion are children. My background's higher education. So I love anything from young kids all the way up to the recent college graduates. So I spend a lot of time in schools, working with schools, and then running to a ball field, that sort of thing. Yep.
The amount of time you spend on a ball field, a football field, baseball field, whatever, is astronomical. I feel like we're also in the personal stage, like we're in that blessed stage where we're walking into rooms and then we forget why. And we're thinking, do we have like early onset dementia? Or we hope we remember our car tweezers because there's that one freaking chin hair that decides to pop up and you're like, I have to do something about this. So yes, those are the things that we get to deal with. I mean, our teenagers are dealing with driving and dating and all those cool things. And we get to deal with chin hair and forgetting and the funny
and the gut,
things.
the like mom belly.
Oh yeah, all of a sudden it's like what is happening? Like I remember when I was in college. So my major was marriage, family, and human development. And so I remember taking a class called Adult Development and Aging. And I remember the whole time thinking this is the worst thing. Like it was all like these horrible things. It wasn't like, oh, as you're older, these are all the things that get better. It's like, oh, this breaks and this breaks and this hurts and this declines. And it really sounded like this horrifying pit of despair. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, my attitude toward aging is not as positive than I want it to be. I want it to be a little bit more positive. And like really when you think being on this earth, like every year that we're here is a privilege, right? But
It is.
It doesn't feel like a privilege when we have horrible sleep, we feel ragey, we feel anxiety, all of a sudden nothing fits, all of a sudden we get acne, and we thought that would happen a long time ago. Why is it happening again? That's
So last night, funny story is Brady, our 8-year-old, he wanted to play Twister, and then he's like, Mom, I want you to play with me. And I was like, I danced in college, like, I hadn't worked out lately, we can talk about that later, but I love working out. And then he's like, play with me. And I'm like, okay. You know, it's right hand red, like left foot yellow. And then I'm all like twisted up, and then I'm like, oh my God, my back.
Oh no.
And I was like, I used to not do that. But it's like, life after 40.
Absolutely.
So embrace it. But yeah, we're like on the struggle bus a little bit.
We are. Like Lucy, we've got a trampoline in the backyard, and Lucy, you know, she's doing flips and front handsprings, and she's like, Mom, you do something. And I'm like, girlfriend, first, I don't want to pee my pants, for one.
Yeah.
And then second, it's like, I remember I was a gymnast for 8 years. I could do flips, I could do all the things. But now it's like my back just will not bend. Like I tried to do a bridge, and it was like I was a turtle that flipped off, you know, on a shell. Yes. Like I had nothing. And so seeing like the physical changes, not just what you see, but like what you feel and like your sudden limitations, it's so offensive.
I'm a feeler, like by nature. Like that's one of my strengths is like I empathize or can understand with people. And when you talk about the emotional, you're like, fine 1 second, and then the kids are like, what's wrong with you, Mom? And I'm like, I don't know. Get your homework done or whatever. And I'm like, wow.
I know. It is like, what is going on with my body? I mean, it's like what I've kind of learned and what I feel like is a fairly good metaphor is like, okay, at this age, like we're having these levels of like estrogen and progesterone that are just like fluctuating and declining as our body is going on this like slow path to menopause, right? But it's almost like we have gotten on a roller coaster that first we didn't ask to be on. Second, the operator of said roller coaster is drunk. And then the roller coaster just keeps changing. It's just crazy. And it's hard because a lot of times you know yourself, right? It's like, but I feel like one thing is you start to not feel like yourself. And that's hard.
It is hard. I remember telling my husband, actually not too long ago, I understand it's hard for a male to really grasp. I mean, had 3 babies. You're emotional then you get the postpartum like brain fog and all that stuff. And it's like, I straight up have the brain fog. And I will start to say something and I will be like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I can think it, I can like see it, and it just can't come out of my mouth. Or I forget what I was about to say, but I was trying to say to him, it's like, I can't explain it that I don't feel like myself, like inside. And I was like, I'm still Carrie and you can still see me like from, you know, outside, like bubbly personality. But in the day to day, I'm like, ooh, something's off, something's not right. I feel a little different. Then you think like, what's wrong with me? Like, is something wrong with me? Am I okay? Like, and I remember my mom was like a GYN nurse. She read an article or something somewhere that said there's like 2 ages, and I'm 44. And one of them is age 44, and like stuff just shifts and it changes. And I have noticed this past year lots of those changes within me, and I'm thinking, yeah, I think 44, maybe that's a magic number. I would kind of be curious, like, was 44 like a tough year? Because I felt like it's been like a challenge.
It's been like a notable difference between previously. Well, 100%. I mean, do you follow Dr. Mary Claire Haver? Do you know who she is?
I do know who she is, and I follow her on Instagram, but I don't watch her. I don't like watch her a lot, but you know, the things that I have seen of her, she's amazing.
One thing that she said that I thought was really interesting is she said the first sign of perimenopause isn't the hot flash. You know, it's not the big thing that it's like, oh, this is happening. It's the kind of when you're realizing I don't feel like myself. Knowing it doesn't have to be this huge, like, noticeable event. I mean, perimenopause, the more I learn about it, it's like kind of the more I hate it a little bit, where it's like, okay, it's just this long kind of can be drawn out process where it's like up to 10 years, which just seems crazy. But
it's
if you
ridiculous.
think, you know, when our children, we were teaching them about puberty, it's like there are very specific signs and we're there to educate them. It's like, you know, we educate them in the home and sometimes school, health class, whatever. It's like, okay, there are signs and it's like, this is normal. You're going to get through it. It's going to be fine. But then I feel like up until literally like in the past few years, there's been crickets. It's like, oh, you're an adult, then things start falling apart. Good luck, especially women.
Yes, especially women. The thing with the 10 years, that stinks. You know what? That really stinks because you're like, well, we could just be in this good old roller coaster ride for a while. And I do love to see that more women, you know, you mentioned Lee and Morgan and stuff. There's so many things out there now. I went and just had blood work done. Okay. Because I was like, ultimately, I was like, I don't feel like myself. What's going on? And you mentioned about estrogen and progesterone. My levels are good on that. You know what's low for me? It's testosterone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what do they tell you about that?
Well, so they say hormone replacement therapy, which I'm like, I'm trying to educate myself. But a lot of times when I was talking to the doctor, when they told me like my testosterone was low, which can lead to no energy, no sex drive, the brain fog, and I'm like, that sounds about right. The hormone replacement therapy, it's my understanding that they will give you that, like you can take I guess you could take a shot or you could take those pellets, but a side effect can be your good old chin, you could get more chin hairs. I haven't done it, but I'm thinking about it because it's like, if it made me feel better and I don't have the brain fog and I don't start my sentence or thought and then I can't finish it, I'm like, yeah, definitely.
So one thought that I have through all of this is if men, and I'm not a man hater, I love men, but if this was happening to them, don't you think there would be a comparable little blue pill that would have been invented years and years and decades ago of, we have to fix this. We can't feel this way, right? And so I feel like research, perimenopause is finally starting to get some attention because now this generation that we're in, we're finally demanding it. I mean, I think of our mothers, which, my mom, I don't think I ever heard her say the word menopause or perimenopause ever. And then, we think of our grandmothers where they were given essentially sedatives. Their symptoms were treated as more of like a psychological condition, like hysteria or whatever. And it's like, oh, here's a sedative. I mean, that was also the time where you would give a fussy baby paregoric, which is like an opiate, So, yes. Have you ever heard of this? Like,
no, I haven't. What is that?
Oh my gosh,
paregoric. Ask my mom.
Yeah, you need to ask her, say like, what's paregoric, mom? They would just treat like, oh, let's numb the symptom. Let's give the baby the opiate. Let's give the woman who is having a lot of anxiety or depression or just like feeling ragey, let's just sedate her a little bit. Yeah. And then she'll kind of shut up. And that was kind of the MO in a lot of ways. I mean, then they're like hormone replacement therapy came about, I think it was like the 80s, but then there was like the huge black box warning that was like, oh, if you do HRT, then there's like this increased risk of all these cancers, right? And that was literally just weeks ago. Did you see there was news that like just a few weeks ago that they took it off because they're like, this is incomplete research. They were taking a very specific subset and like making that the blanket statement.
Well, and I think a lot of that was because I talked to the doctors about that too. And they had told me, they're like, well, there's now all this research that has come out. Because I felt like there's this stigma behind hormone replacement therapy and that it causes cancer. And a lot of that, I think, was stemming around women taking progesterone and estrogen. But I think that same article you're referencing is what the research that my doctor was telling me about. And I was like, okay, sweet. That makes me feel better because I just don't think like back in the 80s and the 90s that they really knew.
Do you feel like your mom being in the medical field, do you feel like that's made her a little bit more progressive as far as like research change, let's get with what is currently being recommended?
She was GYN, so everything like, she's very open about babies and puberty and sex and like all of those things. And I was trying to think about it and I was like, I don't know how much we talked about or have talked about menopause or perimenopause. And I was like, I'm sure she is very knowledgeable on it.
Because she's gone through both. Yeah. You know, herself, but then also if she was working in a gynecologist's office. Yes. Like, she saw it. But now she just tells me, she's like, Carrie, your head's spinning, you're getting a little crazy. And I'm like, leave me alone, Mom. I know. It's like, gosh, come back in 10 years. It makes me think of, do you remember that scene from My Girl where Veda gets her period for the first time and her friend Thomas Shay comes to the door and she slams the door. She's like, come back in 5 to 7 days. Like, I feel like our equivalent is like, slam the door, come back in 10 years. Yeah, don't touch me. Leave me alone. Do what you're supposed to do. Oh my gosh. One question I have that I really want to ask kind of experts, and I've seen, and I want to ask your situation as well, is like, what I've seen is they say, okay, to kind of anticipate what your perimenopause experience is going to be like, the best really place to look is how your mother was affected, how her symptoms were. I asked my mom and I feel like maybe this is like one of my only flexes in life. She was like, oh, I barely knew that anything was happening. So I'm like, fingers crossed, will that be the experience for me? Conversely, I've got a really good friend and I'm wondering, that she has really bad periods. I swear she has PMDD. Like, she loses a week of her life every month. She's very, very sensitive to any type of hormones. Like, she can't take any hormonal birth control or whatever. I just wonder what perimenopause is going to be like for her. And hopefully by this time, as it just becomes more mainstream, as all of our gynecologists get even more educated, because it's like, I salute medical field and doctors, and I know that they know more than I do, but I also want to make sure that just because, they see so many patients, that my concerns are really seen and not just brushed off. I went for my yearly a couple months ago, and I was telling her, she's wonderful, she's intelligent, she's great, but I said, hey, this year I've had some hard times sleeping. I've never had any sleep disturbances at all. She said, well, how's your caffeine intake? And I was like, I don't drink coffee, I don't drink energy drinks, I drink like Diet Dr. Pepper, and it's my one vice and my one true love other than people, right? And so she said, oh, well, just don't drink any caffeine past noon. And I thought,
past noon?
Ma'am, madam, doctor, I feel like that's extreme. And so to really not think of like, okay, let's explain why, let's look into this. It was just like, oh, cut out caffeine after noon. And so I just smiled and nodded, and my compromise is I won't drink caffeine after 7 p.m. I felt a little bit brushed off. Okay, here I am expressing a concern. Yes, this is not life or death. Yeah, this is just occasional sleep disturbances, but it's a change, and I just have questions. Has that happened to you? Have you had any type of situations where you talked to your doctor and either you got great information or kind of like minimized symptoms?
My OBGYN, she's awesome. And so when I kind of tell her all these things, she's like, yeah, you're probably early stages like of perimenopause. And, and she said the things like, I have heard that like with caffeine before, with women, but I was like, like past noon, I don't, like you're running and gunning.
And like a diet soda, it's such a small amount. I'm not pounding Celsius at like 8 p.m., right?
Yes. I mean, sometimes I do. No, I don't do. I would not sleep it.
You'd be like 8. Twitching in bed.
Yeah, I would be like, I'm going to lose my mind. I mean, she told me, she was like, yeah, you're probably early stages, starting, and then this can last, for a long time. But you do bring up a great point, because that's not the first I've heard just, from women kind of feeling that brushed off. These doctors are seeing a ton of patients.
They have hundreds
every single day
of patients.
Then it's like, when do they get time off? Or you call and you can't get in to see a doctor
for months.
So I think for months at a time, and you're like, what? I got to wait that long? Great things like this, and people like Leanne Morgan and Dr. Haber, yes, on social media and her Instagram and stuff like that are great avenues for people to kind of learn more and to educate themselves, and for us to say, I'm not losing it. Oh, I'm not crazy. Like, yes, my body is changing, but it doesn't have to be like, the end all be all and I'm losing my mind. I sleep horrible, or I will forget. I will have this laundry list of everything that I know and I needed to do. And for some reason during the day, it just like exits my brain. And then as soon as I lay down and I'm so tired, and then I'm like, it hits me and I remember, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I just not think about that and do that all day?
Like it was wiped
long
from your brain completely.
Yes.
It's not that you push it off and push it off. It's just like it got hit,
Yes.
Let's wipe it off, and then it just drops back in.
And it was a pretty important thing. And then I'm like, I lay down and I go, oh my God. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. And I'm like, now I can't sleep. The creases behind my knees are sweating, and I didn't have that. So it's like, oh, perimenopause. Yay, welcome to life after 40.
And I feel like I don't have hot flashes per se, but there have been times where I feel like literally my internal temperature was like turned up 10 degrees for no particular reason. I'm just laying there and I'm like, why am I roasting? And then it just will slowly drop down. But I feel like a flash, you would think hot flash, that makes it like seem like a quick thing, like all of a sudden you're hot and all of a sudden it's gone. So I don't know what you would call mine, if it was like the heat wave or whatever.
I do that. I do what you do. I have friends who will be like, they're cold by nature, and then my friend Tanya does this. She's this cute little petite precious thing, and she's usually cold all the time. And then all of a sudden she's like taking her sweatshirt off. She's like having a hot flash.
And you're like, it's like, fan you, here we go. Yes. Oh my gosh.
But I tend to do a little bit more like what you're talking about, where it's like all of a sudden I'll be like, my body temperature, like my internal clock just seems like I'm kind of on fire. And
Yeah, like there's lava under my skin and I don't know why.
Yes.
And it's not like I, did this crazy like exertion or like workout to really like warrant that feeling.
But it's there.
When it comes to like, okay, perimenopause, what Dr. Haver says, she says before anything physical, we've talked about, women feel emotionally not themselves, but it can impact identity, marriage, motherhood, confidence, everything. How has this change impacted your relationship? Has it been noticed at all? Or is it just like your husband hasn't said anything yet?
Lucky for me, his background is like medical device sales, and so he used to work with Intuitive Surgical, and they did the Da Vinci robot, so robotic surgery like for hysterectomy. So he used to always tell me like, I know more about your body than you do, and I'm like, yeah, you probably do. He's not in that realm anymore, but still very knowledgeable about it, so he can understand like, heavier periods, and he's like, you might need to have an ablation, and all kinds of things.
He
like
knows
that.
the words,
he
and
knows
he knows the
verbiage.
definitions.
Yes, and I've told him this. I feel different. I can't explain it. Which he's like, well, go get checked out or go do something about it. Coming from a man who's like, men never want to do anything doctor wise or like health wise.
Like pot, kettle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When I went and got the blood work and I told him like my testosterone was low, he doesn't have a lot of knowledge about that. And so I was like, what do you think? And he was like, I don't know. Like, you'll just have to look into it and, consider it. But if I say to him, like, I think I'm going to do it, like, I think I want to get pellets or a shot or something like that, he would support me on it for sure.
It raises the tides of everything. Like, if you're feeling better, your home life is better, your marriage is better, your relationship with your kids is better, like, your work is better. If you're feeling like garbage or feeling like you are not in your body, essentially, like, what's going on, like, everything is affected.
If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
That's right. That is right. That is so true. So I looked on Reddit about perimenopause, and there was a post, and it was called, this person said, perimenopause is going to ruin my marriage. This is like the title of the post. And I'm going to read it, and it really kind of makes you think. So this person says, I am moody, I am unmotivated, and mostly unbothered by it. I have brain fog. I can't sleep through the night. I am impatient. I can't concentrate. My anxiety has never been this bad. I vacillate between hot and cold all day and night. I have night sweats. I am more sensitive to everything: temperature, medication side effects, allergens. My libido is gone. I say the wrong thing more than I ever have before. Yesterday, I turned a non-emergency situation into a whole big thing. My husband thinks I don't care about him because I forget important things he tells me. I am ruining our marriage. I will be the reason it all crashes out. How sad.
Sad. But you know what? This topic not being talked about, and then you go back to the 80s or 90s and how they treated women, and I'm like, that seriously could be why marriages did not work out, because it's like, oh, mom went crazy. It's like, no, mom didn't go crazy. Like,
her estrogen and progesterone were all over the place.
Yes, could be a number of things, and it was like, it wasn't treated properly or managed some of these symptoms and things. So that,
like, there were a lot of
horrible,
things
but I understand.
There are a few of those. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And I mean, the people of Reddit were so sympathetic and so like validating to this user and saying like, I've been there. I went on HRT. It really, really helped. Like, talk to your doctor. You don't have to be feeling this way. And I feel like that's kind of the beauty of right now, is that, through all like internet, social media, whatever, it's like you can get kind of answers or validation in this aspect really quickly of like, hey, you don't have to be feeling this way. Like, I remember hearing about someone that my parents knew. So this woman, her symptoms were so bad and her emotions were so high, low, that it almost ruined her marriage. Like, they considered splitting up primarily because the emotional state, you know, but really it's like, okay, things have greatly calmed down. I don't know what type of, like, if she went on hormones or if they just kind of waded through the storm. But it's like, oh my gosh, like, if this is how you're feeling, you don't have to feel this way. It means you have to take action. You have to go to your doctor. You have to, get a doctor who listens to you. You have to advocate for yourself. Are you ever going to feel like you did when you were 25? Absolutely not. No. Like, we're not turning back the clock. But you don't have to feel like a crazy person in your own body, right?
Correct. Right. Well, and this makes me think about after having babies, and remember postpartum, when women were struggling and they didn't know it, and it wasn't really like talked about, and it was like, you're just tired, like you've gone off the deep end or whatever, but it was like they were struggling like with postpartum like symptoms, and these women went undiagnosed or whatever, and that's when you saw those stories about the women who would like kill their kids,
like drive their family off a cliff or these horrible things.
Yes. And so that's and then a lot of light and attention came on postpartum women's like, it's okay to feel that way, like you're not losing it.
You need to get help is what you need.
And
then
I think that's kind of where we are with perimenopause, of just like these women, and everybody experiences things differently. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. There's not a one
spectrum.
Yes, there's not a one size like, oh, that's what she got. I mean, you could be in this for 10 years, you can experience symptoms. Then when you hit menopause, like that can last for a while, or what's being kind of brought to light, more women are talking about it. And it's always nice, like when you talk to somebody else and you're like, oh, I'm so glad you feel that way. I feel that way too.
Yes, like because you start to feel,
I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy. You're not crazy. I've heard of perimenopause lately being called cougar puberty. Have you heard that?
You know what? Yeah, I've heard that. And I think that's hysterical. I'm like, yep.
It is.
It is.
There was a reel that I saw, and gosh, what's the girl's name? It's like Christina Kuzmic or something like that. It's our son, and he's looking into the camera, and he's like, hey, I got to tell you about my mom. And then he goes into the symptoms that she's having and talking about like, it's going to be okay. It's kind of like a support group type of video. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? It kind of is. Like we already went through our puberty when we were like middle school, and now this is just a different type of puberty.
There is this woman on Facebook, and she's like the We Don't Care Club.
I love her. It's like Melanie.
She is hilarious.
We do not care that the event we RSVP'd yes to 4 weeks ago is happening today. It sounded good then. It doesn't now. We're not going.
Like, I think she just was posting something, didn't mean for it to kind of take off, but I think that just means like people, really connected and really resonated with what she was saying, that it was funny, but that she's not lying. Like,
she's not wrong. She's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
One thing that I loved is, so Dr. Mary Claire Haber, who is top person discussed on this episode, she said, like, if you're in perimenopause, here are like my big 4 recommendations. And I thought they were all so good. So it's like when we think about how do we want to survive through this time, because we want to more than survive, but like thrive. So her first thing she said is, don't gaslight yourself. She said, and don't let anybody else gaslight you either. Like the symptoms that you're feeling are real. If you don't feel like yourself, don't let anybody else tell you that that's not accurate, right?
Right.
Advocate for yourself. She's another thing that she said that I really appreciated. She said, stop chasing the number on the scale. What you weighed when you were, in college, or after you finished having your babies and you got to whatever like goal weight, like just stop chasing that number. She's like, the scale's never going to love you back. But what she does say is like, you need to have the strength. She's like, pick up some weights, strength train now, because you are going to need those muscles. You will need that strength to support your body through the next years. Like your muscles are going to support your brain. It's going to support your bones, which is huge, and your metabolism.
And that's one thing that, I'll kind of touch on that I have found when I was pregnant with Brady. So he's almost 9. I worked that whole pregnancy. I started as soon as I could back working out. I had a goal of doing 100 workouts before he turned 1. And then we bought Apex a little bit after that, and I got busy like with work and stuff. Like I said, I danced in college, like love working out. And then I was like, I took a nosedive, like off the cliff, like wasn't working out or doing anything. And my OBGYN has talked about this too, like exercising. And we lose, like even starting after 30, like the amount of muscle mass that we start losing. And so I was doing really good like the last couple of years, and then this semester, it's just been really busy and my schedule kind of changed, and so I haven't been able to work out. And I'm like, I think last night, when I was doing Twister, I was like, oh my God, my back, or I don't feel like, I don't feel like it's limber. I do think that is like the exercise piece or the strength training. Women are afraid to like lift weights because they're
like,
afraid they're going to get bulky. It's like, no, like women need to lift weights. Like working out for me is an outlet, because when I feel like I'm lifting weights, I just feel good. I feel good about myself, which is going to translate over into confidence. I would highly encourage, and I'm preaching to myself on this about getting into a workout routine. It doesn't have to be anything major. I mean, like squats or lunges at home.
Like hand weights while you're watching,
yes.
while you're listening to this podcast. Do some squats.
We should have been doing weights and squats
this whole time. Oh, it could have been like a twofer.
That's right. But I think that is important because I think, it's like, I'm like, oh my God, my back hurts. Oh my God, I slept wrong. Like, I would say absolutely 100% yes. Like,
yes.
Women, need to do this in this stage, in this stage of life.
Well, because it's not going to get easier physically. It's not going to get easier. It's like your body is going to start having more issues or more, more little tweaks, more little things. It's like, you're not going to suddenly wake up and be more limber. So like now is the time, like today is the day to start, doing that strength. And it's, you don't have to be going over and doing the dumbbells with the big muscle guys at the gym. Yeah. Like, just keep it simple. Another thing she said, so the third thing she said, feed your body like it is your child. She's like, nurture your body. Don't punish. Focus on nutrition and like protein and fiber.
Protein, yes.
My very favorite thing, I don't know if you've ever tried Clean Simple Eats. They've got protein drinks, they've got protein powders, they have a million different flavors. I love them. Someday they will be a sponsor on this podcast. I'm just going to manifest it.
That's right.
But I drink one every day, and it's like 20 grams of protein, one scoop, and then I put in like a cup of milk, some ice, sometimes I add some peanut butter, whatever, and it's so, so good. And it's like, okay, you don't have to be eating like steak all the time or whatever, but like find a protein drink that you like. If you can just say, at least I'm getting these 20 grams of protein in, you hear all about protein. It's like,
fueling your body. Protein is incredibly important for so many reasons for women, like to help with those muscles. And we just, by nature, anybody, like we don't get enough protein, but women kind of, women especially.
And I feel like coming from the intention of not, I want to lose weight or I'm wanting to, lower calories, like not having that be the intention, but be like, I'm going to be strong until the day I die, like I want to live and be strong every single day till the end. I don't want to be the old woman who can't pick up a gallon of milk.
Or play like with your future
with my grandkids.
Yes, you're thinking about, longevity and being healthy. So that, my mom talks a lot about this, and she's like, I hope I'm around to see the boys grow up and get married. And like I said, she's 85, but I'm like, Mom, you take care of yourself. Like, then you very well could. And so I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I don't want to be like a old crotchety, like, can't move, like grandma. I want to be like the fun,
like my grandma, she's 93. She still drives. She does strength training twice a week. I mean, she has goals, but she eats really well, not because it's like, a weight loss thing, but she's like, she has like powdered beet stuff and like, all these very specific things. She's obviously doing something right if she's 93 and she is still like, go.
That's awesome. I love it.
She's so great. You already said the fourth thing that Dr. Haver said, which was focus on longevity and not perfection. She says, your health is not your weight. Your success is not your busyness. Invest in your future self. And I feel like this is huge of saying like, what are the things that I'm going to do now that are going to carry me into my 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s? Start now instead of regretting when you're finally are retired in your 60s and you're like, I wish I would have started this. This is
you
the time.
See people and they're like, I wish I would have done this or I wish I would have done this. And, I think there's just in today's, modern day times, there really is like resources for everything. If whatever kind of workout you want or whatever kind of meal plan, that you want or whatever, learn that about your body and then fuel it properly to carry you in the marathon, not the sprint, to have that longevity in life. We get to this age and, I'm older than you, but I turn 45 next month. And, my mom said to me the other day, she's like, I can't believe my baby's almost 45. And I'm like, I know. I can't either. Like, what's happened? You want to feel good and you want to enjoy all those moments. So it's like, we got to take care of ourselves and recognize like all the signs and symptoms and take care of ourselves so we can be the best mom to enjoy like all the moments because they're flying by.
They are, and it's crazy.
I
hate it. Carrie, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
I love having you here. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Friends, if my conversation with Carrie felt like something that you've already talked about or need to talk about with your girlfriends, go ahead and drop this episode of Found at 40 into your group chat. We need these kinds of conversations in our 40s. And make sure you're following the show wherever you get your podcasts, because honestly, life in this season brings up stuff no one warned us about, and we're going to talk about it here. So now, let's bring in some expert help. Up next, we've got Dr. Jackie Piasta. She's here to answer the questions that you sent in and is here to help us understand what's actually going on with perimenopause and what we can do to start feeling like ourselves again. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Jackie Piasta to the podcast to answer some of your most pressing questions about perimenopause. Dr. Piasta has the approach that menopause is inevitable in a woman's life, but it doesn't have to be miserable. Even if you aren't in her healthcare network, she is out there doing the Lord's work on Instagram, helping to empower women to be an active participant in their healthcare decisions. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Piasta.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my practice is located outside of the metro Atlanta area, and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. So I am about to enter that crazy phase of life where my daughter is going through puberty, and I am in the midst of my perimenopause journey. So that is all sorts of many different shades of colors there. I have been a women's health nurse practitioner for, oh my gosh, this year, 2026 will be my 16th year in practice. I grew up as the daughter of an IVF laboratory, and I guess you could say so. It's always that kind of weird girl that's like, what does your parent do for a living? And I'm like, my mom makes test tube babies, when we used to call them that. So I sort of always have kind of been in sort of the shadows of the women's health space and really never imagined a different sort of career field for myself. And being a women's health nurse practitioner has really allowed me to kind of step into some really cool spaces and be there to help women through a lot of different parts of their life. But most recently, this perimenopause and menopause phase of life that so many of us are muddling through, right?
Perimenopause is having a moment. I mean, this is nothing new. Women have been going through perimenopause since the beginning of time. However, I feel like it's getting the moment in cultural discussions. It's no longer something that you just are like, shh, don't talk about, or, oh, this is embarrassing. You know, the stigmas are being taken away, which I just really appreciate. Just in time for me, right?
Well, of course, right? Just think about who those women are that are perimenopausal right now. It's your zillennials, right? So it's your Gen Xers, your millennials, and even maybe some Gen Zers too that are going through it. But primarily it's the millennials and the Gen Xers right now that are in the heat of it. And as a millennial myself, I mean, we are the generation that grew up with the birth of social media and the birth of the internet. That's where we spend a lot of our time. And so we're hungry for information. We're not scared of information. We certainly know how to access it outside of sort of some of these more traditional, sometimes we call these ivory tower spaces, like, you know, the doctor's office or an academic setting. So I think that it's become such this cultural moment because of the women that are going through it and how we access information and how we want to access our information.
Absolutely. And I think of, okay, my mother, my grandmother, you know, all the women before us where the information was not just readily available. They had what their gynecologist would tell them, and it was much more limited. The cultural conversation wasn't there. So I feel like a lot of times for them, thinking they probably had to suffer in silence to a degree. The medical information that they had, it seemed like, has since been revised. Like, we are able to approach perimenopause and menopause in a different way than generations before. And so I'm so excited about it. I mean, I'm not excited to go through it, but I'm so excited to like actually have answers, have solutions, and not just be like, oh, that's just, you know, your lot in life. Deal with it.
Oh, no, 100%. I think you touch on some really, really cool points. I have so many women that come through my doors and will say, oh my gosh, I for the first time in my life, I relate to my mom. I can look back and I can have moments realizing this is what was happening to her when, you know, I was in my teenage years or my early 20s, and she wasn't going crazy, or she wasn't, you know, she was experiencing this and she had no resources. She had no outlet. It wasn't, you know, culturally or socially appropriate or acceptable to go out to coffee with your girlfriends and talk about these things. And I think that our generation, the millennial generation, is a little bit more open to the overshare, right? And we talk about these things with our girlfriends. What are you going through? And sort of that pillow talk, I guess, you know, if you want to call it that. Another thing that you said that really struck me is I'm going through it. I'm not excited to go through it. But, I have so many women that feel that way. They feel like, oh my God, this is the end, or this is such a negative, it has to be a negative experience, or they're sort of fated for this to be the end of, a very doom and gloom situation. And I try to reframe it and rephrase it. Perimenopause is just another stage in your life. And it's one that you have the power to really have a lot of control over. And with a lot of the knowledge and information out there, that's going to give us such a leg up to be like, okay, this is what this is. Let's talk about it. Let's speak it out in the open. Let's speak it into life. And then let's figure out, how do we get through this? What are some strategies? What are some tools? Whether that's medication or whether that's lifestyle changes or other things that we can do to really sort of, make the most of this so that it doesn't have to have a negative connotation associated with it. We're all going to go through it. I mean, it's ubiquitous. All women that, are fortunate enough to live long enough are going to experience this in their lives at one point. It's not optional. You can't opt out of it, right? So
Truly.
We haven't figured that one out yet. So we might as well try to figure out, how do we put a more positive spin on this and really figure out what the best path going forward is. And that can look different for everybody too.
So I asked some of my listeners to send their questions that we would address on here. And so one question that came up right away was, how do we know when we're actually going through perimenopause and not just something else?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, because with the newness, right, or the ripeness of all the information out there that we can find, unfortunately, we're going to run into, in that abundance, there's going to be some misinformation too. And so, or there's going to be talk of well, everything is perimenopause. And then perhaps you could have something that's not, and you could be missing it or mistaking it for perimenopause. So the way that we know that you are going through perimenopause is largely still age-based. So we kind of have a population average. For the average woman is going to go through menopause. 50% of women are going to go through menopause at the age of 51. And perimenopause usually lasts on average 4 to 7 years, just depending. For some women, it doesn't last as long. For others, it can last a lot longer. And so we usually sort of say somewhere in the midst of the 40s to the 50s is when you're going to experience perimenopause, right? Clear as mud, right? Great. Thanks for the decade. We really honed that in. But usually in the mid 40s, if you're experiencing symptoms, it's a symptom-based diagnosis. It's pattern recognition, noticing that these symptoms are coming. Oftentimes in early perimenopause, they're coming in cycles because we're still having fairly regular menstrual cycles, but yet we're having these fluctuations in our hormone levels. And so a lot of times our symptoms will be cyclic, or I'll have patients come to me and say, oh my gosh, at this time of the month, my PMS and PMDD has just gone ballistic, or I'm biting everybody's head off, or I'm feeling awful, or I can't sleep, I'm having night sweat, but it's coming every month. You can kind of predict that. Or your period, which used to always be like clockwork, now has shifted a little bit. It's lighter, or it's way heavier, or it's skipping. You're late, but we're not pregnant, right? And so this is also too like that. It's not foolproof, folks. You need to if you need contraception in perimenopause, if you don't want to have a surprise pregnancy in your mid 40s. But it's that pattern recognition, looking at your symptoms. And a lot of times for women, I say, your body better than anyone else. Your body is really shifting gears. And if things feel different, then we need to look into that. And it's our job as a clinician to rule out whether or not it could be something else, right? Night sweats could be other things. PMDD, PMS, changes in your period can be other things. So it's our job to kind of take your symptoms and then put the puzzle together.
So one question I have is, why is there no clear way to test for perimenopause? Why is it kind of a guessing game and a symptom tracker in a lot of ways, whereas in a lot of other different, health concerns, there is a quick test where you're like, oh, blood test says. What is it with perimenopause?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a lot of limitations in what hormone blood testing really can tell us and reveal to us, because perimenopause is really defined by hormonal variability. And the variable hormones, of course, don't make reliable lab tests, right? Because if your estrogen, if you go in and you're like, I want my estrogen level checked, it could be different at 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. It could be different the next day. And so you're only getting a snapshot glimpse of what your hormones are doing at the time. So that's why pattern recognition, because we're trying to figure out what that hormonal variability is in you. Your hormone levels are going to fluctuate all over the place, at least up until the point where your ovaries have given up to the ghost. You are finally menopausal, right? I always kind of tease and say that going out of business sale now is finally over and done with. The doors are locked and boarded up and everybody's gone home. And until that time, we really don't have a confirmatory test, a way to say, okay, this blood level will tell you that you're perimenopausal.
Well, it kind of makes me think of, somebody who might have diabetes and they have kind of that constant blood sugar, the insulin level detection. I wonder, is it something, and this is, I know nothing about the medical breakthroughs or whatever. Is it something where, say, years down the road, the doctors can say, oh yeah, we're going to be tracking this and we're going to be tracking hormone levels, and there's some technology, this, whatever like patch you can wear to track this for, a week. Is that something that literally is like feasible?
So right now we're starting to see in the tech world kind of this coming of age in the tech world, trying to figure out where it sits in the perimenopause space. We have, a lot of the wearable devices are trying to figure out and hack into how do we track or diagnose, right? Get into that.
Code.
Yeah, crack 100%, crack that code. And it is, all of them are really trying to figure out what data points are going to make sense for catching this hormonal variability. There's some discussion of some newer tech coming up to check a collection of tests. So we have estradiol, which is the primary hormone produced and from the ovary when an egg is being developed. And then we have follicle stimulating hormone, which is the hormone from the pituitary gland in your brain, which is that master signaler. It's what tells, it gives the ovary its instructions to bring that egg up from what we call a primordial follicle, or just sort of laying in wait, to being that dominant follicle for that month. So estradiol, follicle stimulating hormone, and then something called anti-Müllerian hormone, which sort of gives us an idea of what's your overall or the remaining number of eggs that you have. And so there's been some discussion as to whether or not we can use the three of these tests in collection together, but likely that's going to look like still measuring those over time to get more data to figure that out. So we're nowhere near close to where we're just going to roll up, get our blood sugar levels checked,
like
and
do
be
a
like,
little finger
boom,
prick.
you're diabetic. Yeah. We don't have a cutoff. We have thresholds in diabetes, right? You can get your hemoglobin A1C, which is essentially a calculation of your blood sugars over the last 3 months. And if your A1C is over 6.5, that's our threshold. That's our cutoff. You are now diabetic. We don't have anything like that for perimenopause. And so that's why we still very heavily rely on the collective picture of what's going on with you as an individual human being.
Absolutely. Okay. And, knowing that kind of the tech companies are really on this, they're trying to figure out if there's a possibility. I mean, maybe not for us and our experiences, but maybe our daughters, there will be these crazy breakthroughs where, they're able to hone in on exactly what's going on with their bodies and their health before they have any type of discomfort or have to ask those questions. You never know. One question that a listener had was, what doctors need to be in our lineup when we are 40 plus?
That's such a great question. So I think that the person that you definitely need to keep when you're 40 plus is you need to have a good OBGYN or a women's health nurse practitioner or physician's associate. And ideally, if you're in that perimenopausal time, you would ideally have somebody that is what we call menopause literate. They might be certified by the Menopause Society. That's something that more and more clinicians are sitting for, that certification exam. So at least you know that they have a relatively higher degree of menopause knowledge, because unfortunately, menopause curriculum is not mandatory in med school and nurse practitioner school and PA school. And so it's sometimes still a crapshoot whether or not your women's health clinician knows. Then have a primary care physician. That's ideal because we want to make sure that we're getting on top of your cardiometabolic risk factors and making sure that you're getting all of your screening tests that you need, your vaccines, your things like that you need to stay on top of. Sometimes it's good to have a dermatologist or at least have a yearly full body skin check to make sure that we rule out any type of skin cancers which can arise as we get older. You know, and tell you the amount of people in my life who have been diagnosed with some type of skin cancer because our generations were probably not the best at sun SPF and sunscreen protection. I remember so many beach burns. It like pains me now.
In the tanning bed. The tanning bed.
Oh my God, the tanning bed. Oh Lord, don't even get me started with that. So a primary care physician or nurse practitioner or PA, a gynecology clinician, a dermatologist would be great. And these are, of course, generalizations. And then here's a big one, a mental health professional, or at least try to figure out where to find one if you need one. Midlife is the time where our worlds tend to collide. Our parents are aging. They tend to have greater needs and they're falling back on us. And oftentimes we're still stuck raising our own children. And this is what they kind of dubbed the sandwich generation. And nobody taught us how to manage all this stress and the burden of our personal lives, our professional lives, and all of that put together. So finding somebody that is a trained mental health professional can be invaluable. And then if you have birthed babies, then potentially a pelvic floor physical therapist is somebody that you may want to have in your repertoire because a lot of us are peeing our pants.
Yeah,
or
if you have to cross your legs when you sneeze, that's your sign. If you don't want to go on the trampoline, there you go.
Yeah, the trampoline. If you look at a jump rope with like massive doom and gloom, a pelvic floor physical therapist is got your back. And then a lot of us have evolving intimate lives, and so some of us can experience pain and discomfort with intimacy. And so a pelvic floor physical therapist really can be so knowledgeable to help us and you through some of those concerns. So that's not inclusive, and I'm likely forgetting colleagues and people, but I would say as a general rule of thumb, that's who I would kind of pencil down.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A question that somebody had was hair loss help. What are we doing about perimenopause, the hair loss that happens in those ages? I've noticed it's definitely for my hair, like my little ponytail gets smaller and smaller every year, and it just breaks my heart. But yeah, what is something that you have recommended for some of your patients?
Well, so we have to first identify the root cause of where the hair loss is coming from. Is it genetic? Is it female pattern hair loss? Is there stress associated with it? Or is there potentially a micronutrient deficiency? So anytime I have a woman with hair loss, I want to check for iron levels. I want to look at some general lab levels. I want to check a thyroid level. I want to make sure that there aren't any areas where the hair loss could be coming from what we call a physiologic reason. Next, we want to look at the process that aging takes on this, and then perimenopause and menopause in general. We have a hormonal shift that happens. Estrogen helps stimulate the growth phase of our hair cycle. And then we have this shift in our hormone levels where we have a relatively higher concentration of our androgen hormones, or what we would traditionally dub like our male hormones, our testosterone, as it relates to estrogen. It's also why we get chin whiskers in perimenopause.
And they're so offensive.
Yeah.
They're so offensive.
Car tweezers are your best friend, car tweezers. And acne. A lot of women in perimenopause can be like, what the heck? I'm a teenager again. I'm having acne. It's because that relative shift of testosterone and estrogen and the relationship to those hormones puts that out of balance. But as far as treatments are concerned, so once you've figured out what might be contributing to your hair loss, then we can really start offering potential interventions. So pharmaceutical medications are going to be the most popular one, and probably the most effective one is going to be minoxidil. Most people know minoxidil as Rogaine, or the over-the-counter hair regrowth formula, foam formula. They do make it in a male and a female regimen. I always say that's part of the pig tax. Most women should just be using the male formulation, the 5% topical minoxidil. Just as a rule of thumb, if you have pets, topical minoxidil actually can be toxic to pets. So you just want to be careful that you're not overusing it, or you're not exposing your cats. Tend to be overly sensitive to minoxidil, but also dogs can be as well. But topical minoxidil, it is a little bit finicky. You do have to apply it twice a day for a minimum of 6 months and see improvement. So it can be a little bit tedious and burdensome. Then we move to oral minoxidil, which has excellent data for female pattern hair loss. There's another medication called spironolactone, which is called a 5-alpha reductase blocker, which is an enzyme blocker that is implicated in our hormones. So oftentimes women can be prescribed it for hormonal acne. We can also use it to help support hair as well. Those are probably the two biggest ones. And then, of course, addressing all those underlying issues, nutrient deficiencies. A lot of women have low iron. You really want to get an iron or a ferritin level measured. And ideally, you want that number to be above 50 nanograms per milliliter on your lab levels, especially if you're really trying to regrow your hair.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Another
Sure.
question. At what point is HRT the appropriate next step?
So really, this is hard to generalize because it depends on every woman. When I see a woman in perimenopause, I start with asking her 2 questions. They'll say, do you need contraception? And do you need management for your menstrual cycle from a gynecologic standpoint? So a lot of women are dealing with heavy bleeding, fibroids, endometriosis. Is there some type of condition that makes you somebody that really needs to utilize a more traditional birth control pill to help treat those things? Also, conditions like PMS and premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which are mental health conditions related to mood instability over the course of the menstrual cycle, are oftentimes best treated. We have the best data for a birth control pill. So if your answer to either one of those questions is you need contraception or you need some type of management of your menstrual cycle and the conditions associated with it, birth control pills are probably going to best serve you all the way up until you reach menopause, which is on average age 51, 52. 90% of women have gone through menopause by the age of 55. And that's usually in and around without any underlying medical conditions or anything. That's usually when we say most women are safe to continue a birth control pill up until that time. But of course, your healthcare professional will direct you on your personal situation. However, I have a lot of women coming to me and they've either had previous negative experiences with the birth control pill or that is not the approach they want to take. And so I would say that the time to start menopausal hormone therapy in the perimenopausal standpoint is if your symptoms are starting to take control of your day-to-day functioning and your quality of life is being significantly impacted. And that can be anything from sleep, and you just can't get to sleep, hot flashes, night sweats, you're having symptoms that you know are related to that perimenopause transition, and we've ruled out other things. That is the time. You can only answer that question because you only know when push comes to shove. You're sort of waving your own white flag, so to speak.
You're like, please, anything, help me.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's such an individualized question, so it's really hard to answer in sort of a podcast-like setting. But usually it's when your symptoms are affecting your quality of life and there are no, clear health indications that it could be something else. And we've weighed, the benefits and the risks, and you don't have those other concerns to manage when it comes to perimenopause in terms of contraception and menstrual cycle treatment for some reason.
Okay. All right. So I have another question that doesn't really have a clear answer. But generally speaking, I mean, I have friends who have really rough periods, PMDD. Is it likely that perimenopause will be a punch in the face for them if they're more sensitive to, just the hormones in their bodies?
So we call this a period of vulnerability. The postpartum period, or the time after you've given birth to a child, is a time or a window of vulnerability where there is some hormonal instability, and certain individuals tend to be more sensitive to that fluctuation in hormones. So perimenopause is no exception. It is another sort of a limb on that tree in terms of a time in a woman's life where she may be more vulnerable to the hormonal instability and those hormonal fluctuations. So it's not always. Some women will sail through it and do just fine. But I would say that if you have previously struggled with hormonal mood concern, that perimenopause is a time where we really need to plan for that. And so that would be where I would actually take a more proactive approach. And we should, and there is a push to sort of be educating women younger. At 35, we need to start telling women, hey, this is what perimenopause is. Before, we need to look out for these sorts of things in the future. It's going to happen in and around this age range. So if you feel something off or weird or different, or friends or loved ones are noticing it, let's talk about it. So the answer to that is yes and no. But if you have struggled with it in the past, then there is a higher likelihood that it is going to be a little bit of a bumpier experience for you just because of that. Again, back to that hormonal instability.
This is such good information. I would say there's probably just one more question I have because I know that you have a lot going on and I definitely want to be respectful of that. What can we be doing in preparation right now for perimenopause? What supplements are we taking? what, as a general rule, will be helpful for most women in this age range?
So I always counsel and I say, let's build a foundation and let's build sort of the building blocks of the house before we start hanging up the pictures on the wall, right? So
Okay.
as far as supplements are concerned, I think those are sort of the last thing that we need to start thinking about, with the exception of like micronutrient deficiencies, the vitamin D deficiency or iron deficiency. Those things are true medical concerns that need to be addressed. But let's look at how do we build the lifestyle pillars, foundations of a healthy lifestyle. And that's really honing in on your sleep. What are things that you're doing now that are affecting your sleep? Are you doom scrolling at night? Are you eating or drinking past 8 p.m.? That's going to affect your blood sugar and metabolism and doing that. So how much are we drinking? Let's start to inventory our alcohol consumption. Really take stock of your sleep and try to implement sleep hygiene, which is essentially just taking good care of your sleep and sleep principles. Next, I want to focus on how are we moving our body. I don't love the term exercise or fitness or anything like that. Let's just take stock of how we're moving our body. Are we doing things that are going to help our metabolism as we shift into midlife and we sort of get this downshift in our metabolic output? And so let's add movement into the day. Whatever fits into your life or you can do without feeling totally overwhelmed by it is going to be the right move for you. And you can gradually add on as life affords. So ideally, we're going to be getting strength training in twice a week for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to be moving and getting our cardiovascular health and helping our heart stay strong. So we're going to be getting that in. So just query your movement. Stress. Take a look at the stress in your life. Where can you incorporate boundaries? Where can you incorporate breath work, mindfulness, gratitude practice? And maybe in this situation, we need to lean on somebody that is a mental health professional and kind of can help us really sort through some of that. Those are the biggest ones, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then we look at supplements. So what supplements do you need? Well, first, I kind of take a pared down approach to supplements. Of course, the internet is trying to sell us every supplement under the sun.
Everything.
Every supplement. But look for the things that actually you need to replace, or look for things that could be replete. So again, I'm harping on it. Vitamin D, iron, your vitamin B12 specifically, especially if you're vegetarian or vegan, that's going to be a big one that you need to replenish and replace. And then you can start adding on from there. If you feel like you're not meeting kind of the hallmarks of nutrient density in your day-to-day eating, then perhaps a multivitamin might be good for you. And then omega-3s, there's such conflicting data over omega-3 fatty acids and to take them and to not to take them. I would say I would probably lean towards don't take them unless you have a clinician that you sit down with and you have a specific reason to put that back in your day-to-day. Same is true of a probiotic. Sometimes probiotics can make things worse, not better. So I would not just go picking up any old probiotic off the shelf. I would sit down and talk about whether or not that would add value to. And I think that a lot of times people don't recognize this as a supplement, but fiber. How much fiber? We're seeing so much more colon cancer being diagnosed younger and younger. And likely it's because of our ultra-processed diets and the lack of fiber that we have in our diets. And so fiber, you should be getting approximately 30 to 35 grams of fiber on a day-to-day basis, ideally from whole foods. But do you need to supplement fiber into your day-to-day? And then there's a bajillion other supplements that we could talk on for hours on end. But I would say those are going to be kind of your hallmark ones. There are some ones in perimenopause that I'm a little bit preferential towards. Like I love magnesium for sleep and for bowel regularity. I love creatine for muscle and brain fog and some cognition. And there's probably other ones I'm missing. But I would say, generally speaking, I would aim to pare down your supplement regimen rather than to just throw everything in and hope for the best, right?
And then also make sure your foundation is strong. You know, I love that it's like, these are the things that we need to address first, and then we can talk about supplements. Then we can talk about, adding all these things. But if you don't have the foundation in a right spot, then really, will all of these other supplements do their jobs to their fullest? Absolutely not.
Well, most of the best interventions are going to be boring and free. that's not flashy and exciting.
It's not the magic pill.
Yeah, it's certainly not what consumerism wants us to believe, but get the boring and free stuff down first, and then you can decide where you sort of sprinkle on, your extras.
Awesome. Okay. Well, gosh, Dr. Piasta, thank you so much for coming on. Can you share where listeners can find you and learn more?
Sure. I'm most active on my Instagram page at JackieP_GYNNP. So I'm be so excited and happy to have any of you listeners come follow me on there. And I practice in Marietta, Georgia at Motherhood.
Thank you so much again. I loved being able to have this chat.
Sure. No, it was great. Thanks for having me.